Today we continue our journey back to Europe in the 13th year of the 30 Years' War. Before we dive into the story, please help the channel reach 1,000 subscribers. It will really motivate us to bring you more amazing stories. Now let's get started. The year 1631. Europe was no longer a peaceful land. The 30 Years' War had entered its 13th year. The fields that once bore heavy harvests were now torn apart by hooves, cannon fire, and cries of despair. From Bohemia to Bavaria, people were swept up in a vortex of religion and power, a nightmare with no end in sight. In the midst of this chaos, a man stepped into the fray with fierce conviction and an army forged like steel. His name was Gustavus Adolphus, King of Sweden, the commander history would call the Lion of the North. Gustavus Adolphus was no reckless adventurer. King of Sweden since 1611, he had spent his youth fighting against Poland and Russia. Step by step, he built the most modern army in Europe, not by numbers, but through tactics, discipline, and faith in the justice of Protestantism. When the Catholic forces under Johann Tserclaes, Count of Tilly, swept through the Protestant land of Germany, burning towns and spreading fear, Gustavus could not stand by. But he knew that victory required more than courage. He needed an opportunity. That opportunity came in 1631 in a small village north of Leipzig called Breitenfeld. On September 7, 1631, the Swedish and Saxon Protestant armies gathered at Breitenfeld. Opposite them stood the battle-hardened forces of the Catholic League, led by Tilly, a seasoned warrior who had won dozens of battles. Tilly commanded about 35,000 soldiers, including elite infantry, strong cavalry, and heavy artillery. He relied on the classic Spanish tercio tactic, massive square formations of pikemen, nearly impregnable to ordinary infantry attacks. Gustavus was different. With around 23,000 troops, he relied on flexibility, light artillery that moved quickly, cavalry organized into small mobile groups, and infantry fighting in linear formations, firing volleys instead of single shots. Each unit was supported by accompanying artillery. It was a new war machine, unseen before in Europe. On the morning of September 17, 1631, the sky was clear and the air still. The fields of Breitenfeld stretched endlessly. On one end, the Swedish-Saxon army formed 3 large blocks. On the other, Tilly's tercio formation stood like a wall of steel. Both sides waited silently, like 2 predators stalking their prey. Then the drums sounded. Tilly's army attacked. The spearhead was his right wing, where Gustavus's forces coordinated with the Saxons. In an instant, the inexperienced Saxon line, shaken by the power of the Catholic artillery, collapsed. Their ranks broke, soldiers fled, pursued by Catholic cavalry. A huge gap opened on the Swedish flank. For anyone else that might have meant the end. But Gustavus did not panic. He immediately sent his reserves from the right wing to fill the gap. Swedish cavalry turned and counterattacked, driving the Catholic cavalry out of position. Swedish artillery also began to retaliate. Unlike Tilly's heavy cannons, Gustavus's light artillery could move constantly, firing close and precise shots that formed a deadly hail of steel. The Swedish troops did not try to charge the solid tercio blocks head-on. Instead, they flanked them, using cavalry to attack both sides, while the artillery fired obliquely at the vulnerable edges of the tercio formations. By noon, Tilly's right wing was in chaos. The tercio ranks began to falter. Some Catholic units lost contact and were pushed out of the battlefield. Then Gustavus struck the decisive blow. The entire Swedish force, infantry, cavalry, and artillery, shifted left, attacking the centre of Tilly's army head-on. At that moment, Tilly was wounded and lost command. The Catholic forces were disoriented. Like a fortress crumbling from within, the tercio formations were surrounded and shattered. As evening fell, the fields of Breitenfeld ran red with blood. About 7,000 Catholic soldiers were killed, with thousands more captured. In contrast, the Swedish lost only about 2,000 men. Gustavus had not only won a battle, he had shattered what was thought to be the invincible Catholic formation, something no one had done in 13 years. News of the victory at Breitenfeld spread across Europe. Protestant lands that had lived in fear began to rise up. The Swedish army marched into central Germany like liberators. Gustavus was hailed not only as a king, but as the protector of the Protestant faith, a modern Alexander the Great. But above all, he had proven that a small army, if organized scientifically, disciplined, and fighting for an ideal, could overthrow even a giant war machine. Breitenfeld also marked the death knell for the classic tercio tactic. From that point on, European warfare would have to follow the Swedish model: volley fire lines, mobile light artillery, and flexible coordinated cavalry. Modern warfare had begun, but the glory would not last forever. The next year, in 1632, Gustavus Adolphus fell in battle at Lutzen. His death left a void that could not be filled. Yet the victory at Breitenfeld remains his undeniable legacy, a declaration in blood and steel that innovation, courage, and intellect can defeat a 1,000-year-old tradition. And that's the end of today's story. Thank you all for watching the entire video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like and leave a comment below. See you in the next video.